The stars had never seemed so quiet. For millions of years, humanity looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They sent signals into the darkness. They built telescopes and listened for whispers from distant worlds. They hoped and they feared in equal measure. The answer came on a cold morning in December. Admiral Tejo was drinking his coffee on the bridge of the UNSS Defiance when the alarms started screaming. He set down his cup slowly, watching as his crew rushed to their stations. He had commanded this ship for 15 years. He had seen pirates, asteroids, and solar storms. But the readings on his screen were something new. "Sir," said his communications officer, a young woman named Yuna. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "We have contacts. Hundreds of them. No, thousands." The main screen flickered to life. Against the black emptiness of space, shapes were appearing. Ships. Massive ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They emerged from some kind of fold in space itself, like doors opening from nothing. The fleet stretched across the void like a metal tide. Tejo counted silently. He stopped at 5,000. "They are hailing us," Yuna said. "Put it through." The screen changed. A face appeared, though calling it a face felt wrong. The creature was tall and covered in gray scales. Its eyes were like black pools without any light in them. It wore armor that gleamed with gold and strange symbols. When it spoke, its voice was deep and cold. "I am Supreme Commander Kath of the Galactic Hegemony. Your species has been observed and judged. You are primitive. You are weak. You are alone. The hegemony has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. 17 species bow before us. None have refused and survived." The alien paused, as if waiting for fear to settle in. "You have one standard rotation to surrender your world and your people. You will become servants of the hegemony. Your resources will be taken. Your soldiers will fight our wars. This is not negotiable. If you refuse, your planet will be burned to ash. Your species will be erased. Not even memories of you will remain." The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. Every officer stared at the screen, where the alien fleet still hung in the darkness. Earth was behind them, blue and green and fragile. 8 billion people lived there. None of them knew that extinction had just knocked on their door. Tejo finished his coffee, and he said calmly, "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the guests have arrived." "Arrived, sir?" He smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had been waiting for something his whole life. "We knew they were coming. We have known for 300 years. Truth was something only a few million people on Earth knew." In the year 1724, a damaged alien probe had crashed in the mountains of Korea. The government of that time had hidden it. Scientists had studied it in secret, and inside that probe, they had found star maps, military records, and a simple message. The hegemony was coming, and they conquered everyone. For 3 centuries, humanity prepared. Not openly, not loudly, but with quiet, patient fury. They built shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt. They constructed weapons platforms on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. They created warships that were ugly and brutal and designed for one purpose only: killing. The world's governments fought their little wars and played their political games. But beneath it all, they worked together on the greatest secret in human history. When the enemy came, humanity would be ready, and now the enemy was here. Defense Minister Hannah received the news in her office in Seoul. She was an old woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. Her hands did not shake as she picked up the phone. "Wake everyone up," she said. "It is time." Across the solar system, hidden bases came to life. Millions of soldiers who had trained their whole lives for an enemy they had never seen put on their armor and checked their weapons. Pilots climbed into cockpits of ships that officially did not exist. On Earth, massive doors opened in mountainsides, revealing missile batteries pointed at the sky. On the Defiance, Yuna looked at her admiral with wide eyes. "Sir, What do we send them? The aliens, I mean? They are waiting for our surrender. Tejo stood up. He walked to the main screen and looked at the hegemony fleet. Those ships had conquered 17 species. They had burned worlds and enslaved billions. They expected terror. They expected begging. Send them this, Tejo said. We have been waiting for you. Una typed the message. She hesitated for just a moment, then pressed send. On the hegemony command ship, Supreme Commander Koth received the reply. He read it 3 times, certain there was some translation error. His officers gathered around him, equally confused. What does this mean? One of them asked. Are they threatening us? Koth did not know. In 12,000 years, no species had ever responded to the hegemony's ultimatum with anything but fear, crying, begging, desperate offers of treasure and loyalty. But this species, these humans, had sent back 5 words that made no sense. We have been waiting for you. And then the hegemony's sensors detected something impossible. From behind every planet and moon in the system, ships were emerging. Not dozens, not hundreds. Thousands of human warships, hidden and waiting, now revealing themselves. Like wolves stepping out of shadows, Koth felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt afraid on the Defiance. Admiral Tejo opened a channel to all human forces.
Admiral Tejo.
The enemy is here, just like we always knew they would be. They think we are weak. They think we are afraid. They think they are bringing war to us. He paused. Show them what war really means. Across the solar system, humanity laughed, and then they attacked. The first hegemony ship died screaming. It was a massive cruiser. It's bigger than a mountain, carrying 10,000 soldiers who had never lost a battle. Its captain gave the order to fire on the human defense station near Mars. The weapons charged. The crew smiled. This would be easy, they thought. This would be quick. The station exploded before they could fire a single shot. But not from their weapons. From inside the station, something burst out. Dozens of small ships, fast and angry, covered in guns and missiles. They swarmed the cruiser like insects attacking a bear. The captain tried to turn, tried to fight, but the human ships were too fast, too many, and they did not stop. In 60 seconds, the cruiser was burning. Across the solar system, the same story repeated itself. Hegemony commanders, confident in their power, attacked human positions, expecting easy victories. What they found was a nightmare. Captain Jinwoo flew his fighter through the debris field, hunting for survivors. His squadron had started with 30 ships. Now only 8 remained. Blood floated in his cockpit from a wound on his head, but he ignored it. There was no time to stop. Enemy carrier spotted, his wingman reported. Bearing 2ZN0. It is launching more fighters. Jinwoo looked at his damaged controls. His weapons were running low. His fuel was almost gone. A smart pilot would retreat and regroup. Jinwoo was not feeling smart. All ships, follow me, he ordered. We are taking that carrier down. Sir, we do not have enough firepower. Then we will crash into it. Move. The 8 human fighters dove toward the massive hegemony carrier. The alien ship launched hundreds of its own fighters to intercept. The battle became chaos, fire and metal and death spinning through space. Jinwoo lost 3 more pilots in the first minute, but they kept going. On Earth, Defense Minister Hannah watched the battle from her command center. Screens covered every wall, showing different parts of the fight. Red dots marked human losses. There were too many red dots, but there were more green dots, and the green dots were winning. The hegemony fleet is breaking formation, an officer reported. They are confused. They expected us to fall quickly, and instead, Hannah asked, instead, we are eating them alive. General Daesung stood beside her, his old face hard as stone. He had commanded armies for 40 years. He had studied every war in human history, and he had spent his entire career getting ready for this moment. They do not understand, he said quietly. They have never fought anyone like us. What do you mean? The hegemony conquers easily. They are powerful, so nobody fights back. They have forgotten what real war looks like, pointed at the screens. But we never forgot. We invented real war. We have been practicing on each other for 10,000 years. In space, Captain Jinwoo finally reached the hegemony carrier. 4 of his pilots were dead. The remaining 3 were as damaged as he was. The carrier's guns tore through space, trying to kill them. Jinwoo aimed his ship at the carrier's engine section. His weapons were empty. His shields were gone. He had nothing left but his ship itself. For Earth, he said, and pushed his engines to maximum. 3 human fighters crashed into the carrier at full speed. The explosions ripped through the alien vessel, breaking it into pieces. Secondary explosions followed as the carrier's fuel ignited. When the light faded, nothing remained but floating metal Jin. Dash Wu died with a smile on his face. Back on the command ship, Supreme Commander Koth watched the battle reports with growing horror. His fleet was the most powerful force in the galaxy. They had crushed species that were far more advanced than these humans. Victory should have taken hours. Instead, after 3 days of fighting, he had lost over 2,000 ships. "They do not retreat," one of his officers said, his voice shaking. "Even when they are losing, they keep fighting. Even when they are dying, they attack." "That is impossible," Koth said. "No rational species behaves this way." "I do not think they are rational." Koth watched the screen as another group of human ships charged into his fleet. They were outnumbered 10 to 1. They should have run away. Instead, they flew straight into the guns of his warships, firing everything they had, dying by the dozens, but taking hegemony ships with them. 1 human pilot, his ship already burning, managed to crash into a hegemony destroyer. Both ships exploded together as he died. The pilot was laughing. Koth felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had seen many species face the hegemony. Some fought bravely. Some surrendered quickly. Some tried to run. But none of them had ever laughed while dying. None of them had ever treated death like it was a joke. "Pull back the fleet," he ordered suddenly. His officers stared at him. "I said pull back. We need to regroup. We need to understand what we are fighting." The hegemony fleet began to retreat. Across the solar system, human forces cheered. They had lost many ships, many friends, many heroes. But they had done something no species had done in 12,000 years. They had made the hegemony run. On the Defiance, Admiral Tejo received the news with a tired nod. He had not slept in 3 days. He had watched thousands of his people die. But they had won the first battle. Sir Yuna said softly, "They are retreating." "We did it." "No," Tejo replied. "We survived. That is not the same as winning." "What do we do now?" Tejo looked at the star map. The hegemony controlled thousands of worlds. They had millions of ships. "This battle was just the beginning. Now we prepare for the real war," he said. "And we show them that surviving is what humans do best." The stars were no longer quiet. They were screaming with the sound of battle. And for the first time in 12,000 years, the hegemony heard something they had forgotten existed. The sound of an enemy who would not break. The Hegemony Council had not met in emergency session for 600 years. The last time was when a star had exploded and destroyed 3 colony worlds. That disaster had killed billions. But somehow this felt worse. 17 species sat in the Great Hall. Their ambassadors and leaders gathered around a table made of crystal that was older than human civilization. They watched the recordings from the Sol system in complete silence. When the images ended, nobody spoke for a long time. "How is this possible?" asked Ambassador Veth, a small creature with 4 arms and skin like blue glass. "They are primitive. They barely understand space travel. How did they hurt us so badly?" "Luck," said another ambassador, a tall being covered in brown fur. "It must be luck. No backward species could truly challenge us." Supreme Commander Koth stepped forward. His scales had grown pale, and his movements were slow. He looked like a soldier who had seen something that broke him. "It was not luck," he said. "I watched my ships burn. I saw my soldiers die. The humans did not win by accident. They knew exactly what they were doing. Grand Arbiter Thal, the oldest member of the council, raised one withered hand. He was ancient beyond measure, kept alive by machines and medicine. His eyes were clouded, but his mind was still sharp. "Show me their history," he commanded. "Everything we have. I want to know what we are truly fighting." The records appeared on the crystal table. Images, data, intercepted communications from Earth. The council watched as thousands of years of human history played out before them. They saw wars. Endless wars. Wars fought with sticks and stones, then with metal and fire, then with machines and chemicals. They saw humans killing each other over land, over ideas, over things as simple as the color of their skin or the gods they prayed to. They saw something called World War I. Millions dead in muddy trenches, dying for pieces of ground smaller than a hegemony cargo bay. They saw World War II. Cities burned, populations erased, and at the end, a weapon that split atoms themselves, turning matter into fire. The council watched humans create nuclear bombs and point them at each other. They watched humans live for decades under the threat of destroying their own world, sleeping each night knowing tomorrow might bring extinction, and humans did not stop it. They did not destroy the weapons. They kept building more. "They are insane," whispered Ambassador Veth. "They are completely insane." Thal said nothing. He was reading the deeper records now. The smaller wars, the conflicts that never ended. Humans fighting in jungles and deserts and mountains, year after year, generation after generation. Children growing up with weapons in their hands. Soldiers who spent their entire lives at war and knew nothing else. "Look at this," Thal said, his voice barely a whisper. "Their entertainment. Their stories." The records showed human movies, books, games. Almost all of them were about war, about fighting, about killing. Humans did not just wage war. They celebrated it. They told stories about it to their children. They made heroes of their killers. They evolved on a death world, Thal said slowly. Everything on their planet tried to kill them. The weather, the animals, the diseases. And when they had conquered their world, they turned on each other. They have never known peace. Not true peace. Not for a single generation in their entire existence. Supreme Commander Koth stepped forward. "What does this mean for our war?" Thal looked at him with those clouded, ancient eyes. "It means we made a mistake," he said. "We thought we were predators hunting prey. We were wrong. We walked into the den of the greatest killers the galaxy has ever seen." On Earth, General Desong was having a similar conversation. He sat in his command center with his most trusted officers, planning the next phase of the war. "They will come back," he said. "Harder than before. The hegemony has never lost. They will not accept this defeat." His adjutant, Lieutenant Sumin, pulled up star charts on the main screen. She was young, but her mind was quick and her heart was cold. "Our spies report they are gathering forces from across the galaxy," she said. 50,000 ships. Maybe more. They plan to crush us with pure numbers. "Can we defend against that?" asked another officer. Desong smiled. It was not a nice smile, defend. "No, we could not hold them off forever." He stood and walked to the screen. "But we are not going to defend, sir. We are going to attack. We are going to take our ships into their territory and burn their worlds like they plan to burn ours." The officer stared at him. "That is aggressive." "That is human," Desong replied. "We do not wait for death to come to us. We run toward it with our teeth bared. That is how we survived ice ages. That is how we conquered our world. And that is how we will conquer theirs." He pointed at the star chart. "Start with their supply lines, then their outposts, then their colonies. Make them feel fear. Make them understand that this war will not stay in our solar system. If they want to fight humanity, they will fight us everywhere." Sumin nodded slowly. "We will need more ships, more soldiers. Then build them, train them. We have factories working day and night. Every human who can hold a weapon is learning to fight. In 6 months, we will have a fleet that can strike at their heart." She hesitated. And if we fail? Desong looked at her calmly. Then we fail. But we will make them remember us. We will hurt them so badly that no species will ever forget what happened when they tried to conquer Earth. That is what humans do. We do not go quietly. Outside, the factories hummed. Ships took shape in orbital docks. Soldiers trained with weapons that grew more deadly each day. Humanity was getting ready for round 2, and this time, they were not going to wait for the enemy to come to them. 2 years of blood and fire changed the galaxy forever. The human fleets did not wait for another attack. They built their ships and trained their soldiers, and then they burst out of the Sol system like a wave of fury. No one expected it. The hegemony had spent 12,000 years being the hunters. Now, they were being hunted. Captain Yuri led the assault on the prison world of Kethfor. It was a dark planet, covered in factories where slaves worked until they died. Millions of beings from conquered species lived there, chained and hopeless, making weapons for their masters. Yuri had studied the defenses. The hegemony had 200 ships guarding the planet and 50,000 soldiers on the ground. Her fleet had 40 ships and 10,000 marines. Any logical commander would have said the mission was impossible. Yuri smiled when she heard those odds. The attack at dawn, she told her officers. They're dawn when the guards change shifts. We hit them fast and hard. Free as many prisoners as we can. Kill as many enemies as we can. And if we cannot win, asked one of her lieutenants, then we die fighting. That is better than living on our knees. Oh. The attack came like thunder from a clear sky. Human ships dove through the planet's atmosphere, guns blazing, drawing the attention of the hegemony fleet. While the enemy scrambled to respond, transport ships slipped through the chaos and landed near the prison camps. Yuri was the first one out of her ship. The air smelled like smoke and chemicals. In the distance, she could see the massive prison buildings, gray and ugly against the red sky. Hegemony soldiers were running toward her position. Move, she screamed, and her marines charged forward. The battle lasted 6 hours. Human soldiers fought in the narrow corridors of the prison, the muddy yards between buildings, on the rooftops and in the basements. They were outnumbered at every turn. They kept fighting anyway. When the hegemony reinforcements arrived, Yuri had already freed 2 million prisoners. Her ships were full. Her marines were bleeding. She ordered the retreat, and the human fleet disappeared into space before the enemy could catch them. In her transport, Yuri sat beside a freed prisoner. He was small and covered in gray skin, with big eyes that had seen too much suffering. He looked at her like she was a ghost. "Why?" he asked. His voice was weak from years of silence. "Why did you come for us? Your people do not know us. You could have stayed safe in your own space." Yuri thought about the question. She was tired. She had lost 23 Marines today. Friends she would never see again. "Because it was right," she said simply. "Because no one should be a slave. And because we know what happens when you let evil grow. It always comes for you eventually." The prisoner stared at her for a long time. "You are strange creatures," he said finally, "but I am grateful." Word of the raid on Keith 4 spread across the galaxy. For the first time in thousands of years, conquered species heard something besides hegemony propaganda. They heard about humans, these strange new beings who fought impossible battles and died for people they had never met. Hope is a dangerous thing. The hegemony had worked hard to crush it everywhere they went. But hope is also stubborn. It hides in dark corners and waits for its moment. On a dozen worlds, rebellions began. Slaves picked up tools and used them as weapons. Soldiers from conquered species refused to fight for their masters. Some died quickly. Some won small victories. All of them knew that somewhere out there, humans were fighting too. General Daesun watched the reports with quiet satisfaction. He was old now, older than he had ever expected to be. The war had aged him, but seeing the galaxy begin to shake off its chains made all the pain worth it. "The hegemony is losing control," Suman reported. She had risen through the ranks during the war. Now she commanded her own fleet. 3 of their member species have officially broken away. 5 more are in civil war, and they're military. stretched thin. They are trying to hold everything together, but they cannot fight us and their own people at the same time. Desung nodded. Good. Then we push harder. The human fleet struck again and again. They attacked supply lines and communication centers. They raided shipyards and weapons factories. They did not try to conquer territory. They just destroyed everything the hegemony needed to keep control, and everywhere they went. They left the same message: you are not alone. We are coming. On the hegemony homeworld, Grand Arbiter Thal watched his empire crumble. The maps that had once shown 17 obedient species now showed chaos. Red marks everywhere. Battles, rebellions, defeats. How did this happen? He asked, though he already knew the answer. The humans, his aide replied. They did not just fight us. They gave everyone else the courage to fight too. Al closed his ancient eyes. He remembered when the hegemony was young, when his people had first conquered their neighbors. They had been brutal back then, ruthless. They had believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. Now he understood the truth. Strength built on fear was fragile. The moment something stronger appeared, everything fell apart. Send a message to the human command, he said quietly. Sir, what kind of message? Tell them I want to talk. Tell them. He paused, and for the first time in centuries his voice shook. Tell them I want to surrender. The aide stared at him. The hegemony does not surrender. Thal opened his eyes and looked at the burning maps. The hegemony is already dead, he said. We just have not admitted it yet. Send the message. Maybe the humans will show us more mercy than we showed others. He did not believe that, but it was the only hope he had left. The final battle was not really a battle at all. Admiral Tejo stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking at the hegemony homeworld through his view screen. It was a beautiful planet, blue and green like Earth, floating in the darkness of space. Once, it had been the heart of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. Now it was surrounded by the combined fleet of humanity and a dozen other species who had joined their cause. 3 million ships hung in the void. Most of them were not human. They belonged to the freed peoples, the former slaves, the species who had spent thousands of years under the hegemony's boot. They had come to see the end. Una sat at her station, her gray hair marking the years since this all began. She had served with Tejo since the first day of the war. She had watched friends die and enemies fall. Now she watched history. The hegemony fleet is powering down their weapons, she reported. They are signaling surrender. Tejo nodded slowly. He felt tired, so very tired. The war had taken 4 years. Millions of humans had died. Billions of others across the galaxy had fallen. And for what? This moment. This single moment when the enemy finally admitted they had lost. Accept the surrender, he said, and open a channel to Grand Arbiter Thal. The screen flickered, and the ancient face of Thal appeared. He looked different from the recordings Tejo had studied. Smaller, weaker. The pride that had once burned in his eyes was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like relief. Admiral Tejo, Thal said. I speak on behalf of the hegemony. We surrender. Completely and without conditions, the war is over. I accept your surrender, Tejo replied. Your ships will stand down. Your military leaders will face trial for their crimes. The species you enslave will be freed. Thal nodded. He had expected nothing less. But I must ask you something, the old alien continued. Something that has haunted me since the day this began. Ask. Thal leaned forward. His ancient eyes searched Tejo's face as if looking for some hidden answer. When we announced war, when we threatened to destroy your world and erase your species from existence, you laughed. Your admiral, your soldiers, your people, they all laughed. He paused. Why? What could possibly be funny about annihilation? Tejo was quiet for a moment. Behind him, his bridge crew listened. Across the fleet, millions of beings from dozens of species waited for his answer. This was the question everyone had wondered about. This was the mystery that had confused the galaxy since the war began. You do not understand what we are, Tejo said finally. You saw a young species with primitive technology. You saw an easy target, but you did not see our history. He stepped closer to the screen. We are the children of Earth. We evolved on a world that tried to murder us every single day. We survived ice ages that lasted thousands of years. We survived plagues that killed half our population. We survived predators that saw us as food. And when we had conquered our planet, we turned on each other. Tejo's voice grew harder. We invented war. Not the kind of war, you know, where the strong crush the weak. Real war. War where both sides lose. War where cities burn and generations die. We created weapons that could destroy our own world, and we pointed them at each other for decades. We lived under that shadow like it was normal. He spread his hands. When you announced war, you thought you were threatening us with something terrible. Something we would fear. But we grew up with extinction breathing down our necks. We made peace with death before we left our own solar system. You were not showing us anything new. Thal stared at him, speechless. You wanted to know why we laughed? Tejo continued. We laughed because you walked into our home and challenged us to do what we do best. You wanted to conquer the universe's greatest killers. You wanted to destroy the species that destroyed itself for 10,000 years and kept coming back stronger. Smiled. It was not a kind smile. You laughed because you made the funniest mistake any enemy has ever made. You thought you were the threat. Silence filled the space between them. Thal's face had gone pale. Around the hegemony homeworld, millions of beings understood for the first time what humanity truly was. What happens now? Thal asked quietly. Tejo's smile faded. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, sadder. Now we build something better. We have seen what empires do. We have lived it ourselves. Conquest, slavery, the strong crushing the weak. He shook his head. We will not become you. That is not why we fought. He turned to look at the fleet around him. Ships from a dozen species, united not by force, but by choice. We will build a community, a real one, where every species has a voice, where no one is conquered or enslaved. It will be harder than war. It will take longer than fighting. But we will try. Thal bowed his head. And the hegemony. The hegemony dies today, but your people can live. You can join us if you choose. Learn to be neighbors instead of masters. Tejo paused. It is more mercy than you showed others. But that is the point. We have to be better than the darkness we fought. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, celebrations began. Species that had never known freedom danced in their streets. Humans hugged each other and cried. The war was over. Yuno walked to Tejo's side. They stood together, watching the hegemony homeworld through the view screen. Do you think it will last? She asked. The peace, I mean. Tejo thought about it. It's probably not forever. We are still human. Conflict is in our blood. Eventually, something will go wrong. Then what? He turned and looked at her with tired, ancient eyes. Then we will do what we always do. We will fight. We will survive. And when we win, we will try again to build something good. He smiled one last time. That is who we are. That is what the galaxy learned. You can kill us, but you cannot break us. You can push us down, but we will always get back up. Yuna nodded. Humanity, she said softly. Humanity, Tejo agreed. We are really quite stubborn. Somewhere across the galaxy, someone laughed.